We'll open up the hearing on House Bill 513. Representative McChesney, would you like to open up on your bill?
I would, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. For the record, Chesney, House District 40 in Miles City, for longer than I've been alive. House Bill 513 simply restores and ensures the ability of the Montana Department of Transportation to issue permits for moving oversized loads over Montana's state and federal highway system without the unnecessary and time-consuming process of conducting an environmental review under MEPA. This bill is about that and nothing else. Although I haven't been with the State Department of Transportation for probably the last 9 years, during my 32-year career with the department, I was involved in the permit approval process for many, many oversized loads. That process was and remains detailed and thorough, with roadway integrity, public safety, and minimized disruption being given priority consideration. These loads came in all shapes and sizes, and there was never a need or requirement to conduct an environmental review under MEPA. In fact, back in my day, the suggestion of doing this would have been considered unnecessarily cumbersome, time-consuming, and certainly frivolous. The reality is that extremely detailed and extensive environmental reviews are completed any time a highway is constructed, reconstructed, or improved. The purpose of our highway system is to move people, transport freight, and facilitate commerce. As long as they are traveling within the existing right-of-way, a detailed environmental review has already been done. The only exception I'm aware of in relation to an oversized load is if the move requires utility relocations, although these are rare. And even then, the environmental review would be done in conjunction with the utility relocation, not the oversized load per se. Requiring another environmental review unnecessarily subjects the permit applicants to potentially costly delays simply because somebody may challenge the intended purpose of the load. That purpose has absolutely nothing to do with, nor is there any reason it should be considered in relation to issuing an oversized travel permit. Those matters fall under a whole different and totally unrelated set of regulations. I look forward to an interesting debate, and Mr. Chair, reserve the right to close. Thank you.
Thank you. Proponents for House Bill 513.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Deb Poteet. It's P-O-T-E-E-T. I own Poteet Construction based in Missoula. My company provides signing, traffic control, and pilot services for many oversized loads that move through Montana. I assist in helping with the routing the loads and preparing traffic control plans based on them. The loads that we move primarily move at night and without any disturbances. I have worked with companies from across the United States, and all of them have expressed frustration obtaining the permits, the lengthy permits process with the state of Montana. And we have lost business due to this. I had a conversation just this morning with a company I'd spoken to 3 weeks ago from Manitoba, Canada. They're manufacturers of stainless steel fertilizer tanks. They had 30 tanks that had to be delivered to, and they were looking at Montana, understood there were some issues with the permitting process, and they were afraid to do it. 3 weeks ago, I had the initial contact. Today, they told me that the process was too frightening for them to go through in Montana, and they would be going through North and South Dakota, Wyoming, and get to Utah that way. So 30 loads times, it takes them maybe 2-3 days. That's 60 to 90 days worth of business for me. And these stories go on and on. So I would encourage you to support this. Thank you.
And other structures. We too have been involved in potential moves of large cargo originating throughout the United States and traveling through our state to Canada and some of our neighboring states. Some of these have happened and some of these have not happened because of the permitting process. I've worked with 7 carriers, some of them international, many of them nationwide. These guys own more trucks than there's cars back there. And they express frustration at the permitting process within Montana. And I have heard them say, as Deb alluded to, that if they make it back this way again, they will go around Montana, which is a pretty onerous suggestion considering how large our state is, that someone would rather go around us than through it. So I have to say I fail to see why, if a environmental review has been done at the construction of the road, why it would be done when something is simply traveling along that road. Because these pieces of steel are bigger than every other piece of steel that goes across the road. Why do we need to do an environmental review? So I would like you to support this bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, I'm Kerry Hegreberg, Hegreberg. I represent the Montana Contractors Association. If I could get permission to hand out some material from the Big Sky Economic Development Authority.
Go right ahead.
Reach it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I just handed you some material that I was asked to distribute from the Big Sky Economic Development Authority out of Billings, and it is specifically in reference to some work that they've been doing with Bay Limited, a company that manufactures large modules, most of them headed to the oil sands of Alberta. I was also asked by the Montana Chamber of Commerce to express their support for this bill, and the the Treasure State Resource Industry Association, formerly known as WIDA. On behalf of the Contractors Association, we'd like to thank Representative McChesney for bringing this bill today. Our member companies, you've heard from 2, have been involved in this issue for several years now. They've been contracted to perform a variety of services, including traffic control, moving of traffic signals, moving utilities, and building turnouts associated with these large loads. And in a number of cases, these companies have scheduled their work, they've arranged for their crews, they've purchased materials and supplies and equipment, and they've sacrificed the potential to work on other projects, thinking that they had work lined up to move these loads through the state of Montana. And they've been faced with the prospect of having these projects literally pulled out from under them because they've been unable to secure the permits, in some cases actually due to litigation. Now, the framers of the Montana Environmental Policy Act back in the early 1970s, I think, would have scoffed if they would have been told that this law could be used to invoke environmental reviews in the process of issuing permits for loads to be moved down existing highways through existing rights-of-way. We do not think that there's any way the framers of that law in 1972 or 3, whenever it passed, would have voted for it if they could have been informed that it was going to be used in the abusing manner that it's been used in the last several years. So let's clarify the law now. Let's stop impeding commerce on our highways that were designed, engineered, constructed, and intended to facilitate commerce across our state. There's been a lot of discussion over the years about the need for north-south freight corridors that make trade more conducive all the way from Canada to Mexico. And here we sit, the largest state on the northern tier, and we're posing obstacles to that kind of commerce and economic growth, not only in Montana, but throughout the United States and the continent. And part of our energy security as a nation depends on the commerce that is occurring between the United States and Canada. And again, Montana is a pivotal state to be involved in this kind of interstate and internation commerce. And in the case of Bay Limited, The transportation of these units that are being constructed in Billings is an absolutely critical component of their business model. They've got to be able to get these modules transported to cost-efficient manner, or they simply cannot stay in business in Billings. So we're going to urge you to pass this bill today and exempt oversized permit applications from the Montana Environmental Policy Act. It's a pretty simple bill, and it will have the effect of expediting commerce on our highways. We urge a due pass.
Thank you, Mr. Hegerberg. Any other proponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, I'm Spook Steng, Executive Vice President of the Motor Carriers of Montana, and we too would like to go on record in support of House Bill 513. I think most of the previous speakers have covered a lot of the points. It just seemed like in the past when you had an oversized permit, you went through the process, you talked to the department. It might have taken you, sometimes you thought 10 days to get a permit or 20 days to get a permit was a long time, but it was a thorough permit. It just seems that the process with what's happened the last couple of years has got so complicated that as the previous speaker said, in particular, the company in Billings is having a tough time getting these products that are manufactured in Montana, provide good paying jobs in Montana, ship it out of the state, have run into a lot of difficulties, and most of those difficulties lie within the highway right-of-way. That MEPA review was done when that highway was built. I see no need to redo it in order to do the permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stang. Other proponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Gary Forrester, Forrester, representing Knife River Corporation today. Knife River thanks Representative McChesney for bringing this bill. We think it's an important part of doing business in Montana. We move many large loads, and I think rather than repeat what other speakers have said, we stand in full support of Representative McChesney's bill. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 minutes. Other proponents?